Hi, we're back with our Downriver novel, and I'm on chapter 9. If I remember it right, so Star and Jesse had a good talk about their past, on how Star ended up being an orphan, or how she ended up being just living on the streets. And so I think they had a good moment, having a good girl moment at that time. So let's move on. Chapter 9. Freddie was sitting by the campfire and cradling a steaming cup of coffee in his hand. Care for some? He asked, and then fetched cups for us out of the kitchen box. Get a few grounds, he cautioned. The three of us sat around for almost an hour drinking coffee and watching the glow on the canyon walls turn a richer gold while waiting for the others to get up. We didn't talk much, but Freddie was easy to be around. He and Star were talking about birds, and it was interesting. Freddie was saying he mostly knew about birds in the mountains. I was looking across the river, and I noticed that the water level had dropped drastically overnight. The river had an ugly bathtub ring of mud and rocks, maybe 12 feet high. The river sure has gone down, I remarked. A lot, Freddie agreed. You want to see something? Sure, I said. It isn't very pretty. He led us over to where the boats were tied. They were a startling sight, hanging almost vertically from their ropes. It looked as if someone had pulled the plug on the river. I tried to lower them, Freddie said, but they're hung up on those rocks. I hope nothing fell out. After everybody else was up, we clustered onto the top of the bank and talked about our predicament. It turned out we lost the spare paddle and the spare life jacket. They weren't tied down and they'd simply fallen out of the back of the gearboat. We agreed that we weren't going to leave the boats on a drop off again, and we heaped abuse on the engineers at the dam who jerked the river up and down, depending, we concluded, on how much electricity they want to generate at any given time. We talked about what we were going to do about it. Wait for the river to rise or work like slaves for to free the boats. We went to work. The water level, we noticed as we were standing there talking, was still going down. At last, we were floating in the sunshine once again. Troy had his shirt off, and I was sitting on the gear lashed behind him, chattering away and massaging his shoulders with lotion. It could have been worse, I was saying. I just hope they hang on to the paddles. Paddles. We still have mine, which makes an extra. I jumped to the front as we approached a rapid. We ran it and then a second with no problem at all. The paddle raft was sticking close, and they were doing fine too. Adam had given the rudder position and the captainship over to Freddie, who was a natural. Ahead on the right side, an amazing sight came into view. Bright green hanging gardens and two waterfalls bursting out of caves in the cliff. Troy and I were first to see them, and we shared the moment. I can't believe this, I said. What a paradise! Troy nodded proudly and rowed for the shore. We parked at the foot of the oasis where the cave-fed creek met the river, and we all hiked up to the foot of the falls. Most of us hiked up and around, but Pug, who was eager to join us, came charging right up through the greenery like a rogue elephant. Freddie hollered down that he thought that stuff might be poison ivy. Freddie's warning slowed Pug's rampage for about 2 seconds, and then he came on through. Adam, who was as nimble as those ninja warriors he so admired, soon scrambled up and stepped like terraces high into the waterfalls, and actually gained the mouth of the caves. Freddie quickly joined him. It was quite a sight to see those two standing up there. Adam actually squeezed into one of those caves alongside the jet of water. One slip, I'm sure, and he would have been jetted into the slippery stairs and all the way down to where we were standing. Star and I climbed halfway up to the cave, where the falls fanned out onto the stairs. and we sat on moss-covered benches in the rippling water. Alongside us, a world of ferns and wildflowers took in the spray. It seemed like a glorious way to live. I said to Star, if I were to be reincarnated as a plant, I wouldn't mind living right here. And look at the view. At the foot of the falls was a small pool, and four of us took turns sitting in it and letting the little creek pound on our shoulders while we waited for Freddie and Adam to come down. Pug was off the side, sitting atop the boulder, looking worried and starting to scratch. Back on the river, oh, that's probably poison ivy. That's making him itchy. Back on the river, we floated below the mouth of the large cave perched at about the same level as those that spouted the falls, and Adam had us all quickly paddling for shore. He was sure we could get up there, and he was sure the cave mouth was a mere doorstep to a fabulous network of caverns. Out came the ropes. The idea was everybody was supposed to get up the cave and explore it. Adam was certain could all do it. We could all do it. He kept pointing out the route. There's only one rough spot. Freddie or I can go up with the rope. I was thrilled, of course, remembering my most recent climbing adventure, which she almost fell. Adam came over and lobbied me pretty hard. I started out with the rest. Only Star stayed behind. I went along, not because of Adam's persuasion, but because I knew I had a hang-up to get over. Maybe even more than that, because I didn't want to miss anything. We got up there all right, every one of us, with Adam and Freddie above, Troy giving me an assist from below. I made it up the rope, and this time I remembered Freddie's advice on Storm King. Jesse, don't look down. It was quite a feeling and an accomplishment to stand in the mouth of the cave. I felt pretty good about myself. I waved to Star down by the boats, and she waved back. As we stood there, another group floated by, 3 boats. They saw us up there, and they hollered their appreciation. People in their 20s and 30s, it looked like. They sure weren't nosy or suspicious about us. Maybe from the distance they couldn't tell how young we were. Soon their boats were tiny in the distance and drifting around the bend. Perfect timing. Troy said we didn't have to visit with them. Everybody started talking about Heather, wondering if she squealed on us. Maybe not, Troy said. Looks like we're in the clear. Pug was scratching away in the rising rush on his arms, neck, and face. Don't scratch it, Troy told him. You'll make it worse. We turned to explore the cave. It wasn't Carlsbad Caverns, but then we never got to the end of it either. We came to a big room full of fountains of stones, and we stopped there and poked around. On a wall, my flashlight illuminated patterns. Handprints. Over there, I said. There were dozens of them. A deep red, some apparently made by pressing a hand dipped in pigment against the wall, and some made by pigment blown everywhere but where the hand was. I knew how they were made. My dad had explained it to me. Cavemen, Rita said. Incredible. Check out the gazelles, Troy said, discovering a parade of horned animals farther down the wall. Bighorn sheep, I realized. I saw Freddie smiling. He and I were both from the part of the country. Rock art like this was quite common. The work of Anasazi cliff dwellers from about 1,000 years ago. He gave me a little wink, and neither of us corrected Troy about his gazelles. On the way down from the mouth of the cave, Adam, in his casual manner, got a little careless and kicked a rock loose, a small but hardly harmless rock. It caught Rita, who was just below him, right on the scalp line and opened up a gusher of a head wound. In an instant, the fun was over. This was going to be serious. I barely calmed down and was standing with Troy at the base of the drop when Rita was hit. She was still on the rope. The rock could just easily have sailed by her and struck me or Troy. Rita clung to the rope as blood ran down her face and onto her shirt. She cursed up at Adam and said lamely, sorry. She cursed him again and then dropped beside me. I grabbed her legs and she was falling and hung onto her. Her blood was getting all over me too. It was frightening how much blood there were. Rita was so scared. She didn't know what to do, and I sat her down fast and pressed the palm of my hand hard against the wound to stop the bleeding. I need something. I need a compress, I told Troy, and he mumbled, I can't stand the sight of blood. Adam, who was watching from above, whipped off his t-shirt, tore out a patch of material, and tossed it down to me. Troy was already on his way down to the boats. I couldn't believe he was just going to walk off like that, but that's what he did. I walked Rita slowly down the boats, holding the compress tightly against her head. Her blood was all caked in her thick black hair, and she looked like a mess. Her olive complexion had gone white. We need to do something, I said to Freddie, who was springing off the gearboat with a rocket box marked first aid. None of us had even looked in it before. Let me see how bad, he said, and I lifted the compress so he could see. The wound started bleeding again, but not as badly as before. I said, I don't know what kind of bandage would work. Needs stitches, Freddie said. Stitches? Rita yelled. You gotta be kidding. She started to swoon. I had her sit down, Freddie, I said, in the middle of the lid. See if it says anything about stitches on the list. Freddie was looking at the paper, but he wasn't even focusing. Was he going to be useless too? What's the matter? I said impatiently. Does it have any stitches or not? I can't read very good, he said quietly. He looked away. I'd made him feel ashamed. I had no idea. I'm sorry, I said, and I asked him to hold the compress while I read Al's typewritten and laminated list on the inside of the lid. Suture kit, I called out, and started hunting for it. Now, where does that get us? I'd never done stitches. All right. Chapter 9 is kind of long, so I'm gonna have to stop there, like in the middle of chapter 9, and maybe I'm gonna do another recording.